Roger that.
Sorry.
Good evening, Town of Adams. Today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. It's now 7 p.m., and I'm going to call to order the Selectmen's meeting for the Town of Adams. As we have in the past, I'm going to start tonight with a statement regarding the modified open meeting law. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law found in Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Adams Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in that order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by turning into channel 1303, and thank you to Northern Berkshire Community Television, or by calling area code 929-436-2866 with a meeting ID number of 995-3173-3181 with the following password, capital BOS, numerals 0603. Despite our best efforts, if we are not able to provide for real-time access, a record of this meeting will be posted on nbctc.org as soon as they are able. Now that we have that moment taken care of, I'd like to ask everyone for a brief moment of silence in reflection of the latest information coming out across our nation regarding not only the pandemic that we're facing, the challenges of our first responders, and the myriad of other social issues that our nation is facing. I think a brief moment of silence and reflection would be appropriate before we start this proceeding, of which is the reason why our country is great for these processes that we have. Thank you, and with that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Continue. Peter, I'm getting messages that there's no sound for the television at home.
Oh, that's a lot.
Okay. But can I just check and make sure that those who are on the call can hear?
Sure, we'll take a moment.
I can hear you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
We have greens on all the desk microphones. Joe, you have a green on your desk?
Yeah.
Rick, got a green? You got a green on the phone, Peter? I got a green too.
Yeah. I'm looking into it.
Okay.
Let me know if you need more time, Peter, or we'll continue. Okay. All right, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is Wednesday, June 3rd. We had our town meeting on Monday, June 1st. So with that comes the annual reorganization of the Board of Selectmen, which is why the town administrator has opened tonight's meeting. And I just want to say very briefly, I think it's important for us just to reflect momentarily that we actually are here tonight, we're meeting, and that town government, the pillars of our open democratic society continue. So I just think that in the midst of our national turmoil and a pandemic which has really eroded business. So with that, I will open the floor to item number 3, reorganization of the board.
Mr. Town Administrator, I would like to state that I would like to continue on as chair if my colleagues would so choose to allow me to do so. Since we are currently still in a pandemic, we are still doing remote meetings, and we are now in the midst of reopening businesses in our community. I'd like to be able to continue on with that work, if that is something that the rest of the board would be interested in having me serve as their chair.
I'll entertain any other comments or any motions at this time.
I believe, given the complexity and the logistics involved, it doesn't make sense to me to change horses in midstream. No offense.
Okay.
So I would nominate Christine White as chairman.
I'll second.
I have a second. Is there any discussion? Joe, anything? Jim, anything? Okay, I believe we have to do these as a roll call vote. Is that correct? All of our votes are roll call, I believe.
They are for remote, if some of us are remote, we're on the remote.
Okay.
So,
So I have a nomination, I have a second, I have no discussion. Any other nominations before we continue? Any other motions? And we'll go forward with a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm abstaining. So Deb, for the record, I have, Christine, did you vote? I didn't see, I'm sorry.
I did, yes.
I have 4 yeas. I have 1 abstention. Deb, can you just confirm that you have that vote?
I have it, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Turn this back over to the chair.
And I am, Peter, I'm hearing there's still no sound. Okay. Got it. Okay. Okay. I will let the 3 people who are blowing up my phone, I'll let them know that. So at this time, I will call for nominations for vice chair of the Board of Selectmen.
I'll nominate Jim Bush for vice chair.
I have a motion to nominate Jim Bush. A second by Rick. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? So that is unanimous. Okay. All right, thank you. So that brings us to approval of the minutes. And in front of us, we do have the minutes for the May 7th meeting and the May 13th meeting. And it does look like all members of the board are able to vote on these minutes. What is the board's pleasure with regard to these 2 meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion, we waive a reading of the minutes and approve them as provided.
I have a motion.
For
Oh, yeah, sorry.
May 7th and May 11th, 2020.
Excuse me, it's May 13th.
I should have put my glasses on, I'm sorry.
May
Thanks,
7th.
Joe. And May 13th.
Okay, I have a motion by Rick,
I'll second it.
a second by Jim. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That brings us to public comment. Is there anyone on the call or in the room who wishes to speak with the Board of Selectmen about anything that is not on the agenda this evening? I'll just give it one more minute. All right, hearing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment. We will move on to old business. The first item under old business is the approval of the revised Community Choice Power Supply Program Aggregation Plan. In your packet, you do have a copy of the marked up contract that is before us. I know that the town administrator has sent us some additional information prior to today's meeting, but I'm going to turn things over to you, Jay, if you want to walk us through what's been changed and what the action is. Thanks.
So just as background for folks, the town of Adams is one of several communities that belong to a Community Choice Power Supply Program. The town of Adams joined in 2017. In fact, we may have even joined earlier, but the latest contract has been open since 2017. and expires this November. Even just prior to even COVID-19 having an effect on the national economy, electricity rates have been competitive, and the Community Choice Power Supply Program's manager or consultant, Colonial Power, reached out to all the member communities and began the renegotiation process. That rate was accepted and signed, so just for informational purposes only, the current rate for those who are enrolled in the program that does expire in November is 0.104 kilowatts. The new rates are lower than that, we're quite pleased to say. The standard option is 0.09, and there's a 0.096 even lower option as well. So those contracts have been signed and locked in. However, at the time of the renewal, which is going to be again from November 2020 on, the contract that deals with the towns and deals with the Department of Public Utilities, that's who the agreement is with. The Department of Public Utilities asked that some changes be done. So each member community within the region has the same changes and has to go through the same process. Most of the changes, as they were enumerated in the document, are housekeeping changes. There's no impact or change to the plan or any changes that our consumers or the town as consumers of the plan as well will see. However, the one largest change can be found on page 5, and that is product offerings. So as you may remember, that in that last contract from November 2017 through November 2020, there was only one option, which was at 0.10408 kilowatt. So those who enroll in the program will now have two options. That language that you see on page 5 and 6 is essentially the adding, so that there's now two rates that you can choose, and the other changes are language changes and other things as required by DPU. That is the summation of what's being asked of the board, is simply tonight not to approve the rates. The board is being asked by Colonial Power, as requested by DPU, simply to vote to accept the updated program plan as presented to you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. So are there any questions or comments before I entertain a motion to accept the updated program plan?
Jay, you mentioned that the consumer, the residents of Adams, have two choices for price. So how is this going to be rolled out?
Same exact way as before.
Okay.
No changes. So once the
Okay.
program goes into place, which would be at the end of it, which I believe is going to be October or November of this year, one of the, I think it goes into effect 11/1/20. So sometime before 11/1/20, anyone who's an electricity consumer in the town will receive communication in the normal course like everyone has before, or if you move to town and open up an electricity account, you'll get that communication and you'll have that choice in there. Everyone will automatically default to that standard option, but they'll have they can opt out and go to the floating rate. They can opt out to go to their own supplier if it's available to them, or they can go to the optional product rate. Very simple, very straightforward. Does not change the mechanics of the plan, and it's a more competitive rate.
Right, so if you do nothing, you get the more competitive rate.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
I didn't mention it, but the average floating rate, I took a look just to show comparison. The average floating rate for a National Grid customer in the town of Adams goes anywhere from 0.11 to like 0.13, depending on the time of year. So just as if anyone's not familiar, the whole point of a community choice power supply program is we have so many customers between all those communities, they were able to bid all that electricity demand, all that usage, and get a lower rate. But it also, for a typical homeowner or someone who's paying utilities in their property, it stabilizes the cost. It's not floating all the time, which is what happens on the open market with a National Grid open rate.
And final question, what communities are part of this plan? Last time we had a few with us, this time we have additional?
We gained a little bit more. So all of the communities are the towns of Adams, Beckett, Cheshire, Clarksburg, Dalton, Florida, Waynesboro, Lenox, Monterey, New Marlboro, Sheffield, West Stockbridge, Williamstown, as well as the cities of Pittsfield and North Adams.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, so say somebody's with another program, are they going to receive notification that this is available to them? Or is that something that they're going to have to research and do themselves?
That's a good question. Deb might be able to answer that, as she's been more familiar with the program, but all of the billing goes through National Grid anyway, so it's possible a customer will see the new option. It's going to depend on that customer's individual contract with whomever they've decided to go with. But I don't know of anyone that's done that.
Okay.
That's just an option that this plan has for one of our consumers. And that's all available on Colonial Power Group /Adams, or just type in Adams Community Power Plan, and it comes right up. And all that information's there.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Anything else? So the action before us is to accept the updated program plan as it's been presented.
I make a motion that we accept the aggregation plan as presented to us from Colonial Power Group.
Okay. I have a motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Abstention. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Under old business, there's the item fiscal 21 budget process update and action. I'm going to turn things over to Jay, as we know that this has been a daily discussion about what to do with the fiscal 21 budget, and depending on the information that we're getting from the state has kind of helped move us in that direction. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Jay, to see where we're at and what our options are.
The best adjective I can describe for this whole budget process is certainly dynamic. That is constantly changing with information and data coming in. And there's no right way or wrong way. However, just as a rehash, there's essentially three ways that the town of Adams could go forward with this budget. One, we could make expected budgetary cuts now without really knowing how much our state aid or any other revenue numbers would come in. So we would be essentially blindly cutting our budget and then going forward through it, not knowing really if we needed to cut 200,000, 300, or $500,000 from the budget. There's no real community that is in a position similarly situated to Adams that is doing that. Those communities that I've spoken with who are doing that have been able, or frankly more wealthy, or they have larger stabilization accounts, so they've been able to anticipate, say, a 10 or 15% reduction in state aid and backfill that number with another funding source. For Adams, that's not the case. For most of the communities in northern Berkshire, that is not the case. So we don't feel that's appropriate for us to do, as I've stated before at other meetings. The second option that we've had has been to move forward with a fiscal 21 budget with the existing numbers that we received from the state, and that state aid number was that $2.5 million that I've stated before. We know that number is not likely to hold. Our best guess is that number will probably be reduced anywhere from 10 to 15%. So we could have moved forward with that type of a budget, and as I said, that path was one of our paths, and we were also on the other path that I'll speak about in a moment. But we could move forward with that budget, knowing that we'd have to cut it. And Member Duval had brought up the question at our meeting, when would we do that? When would be the appropriate time and the procedure to do that? We would do that before the tax recapitulation sheet has to be sent to the Department of Revenue. That's the time of year where we sit down with the assessor, we look at new growth, we look at all those formulas that go into determining the tax rate. So we would have to determine exactly how much we're going to cut by and go through Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and another town meeting in order to execute all of those cuts, then go to the tax recap sheet. The other path that we've also been parallel planning for has been what now seems to be probably the best course of action, and that is what's called a 1/12 or a month-to-month budget. What that means is that we are allowed to spend each month a set amount of money that is similarly based on last year's budget. We create it, the Board of Selectmen has to approve it, it gets submitted to the Department of Revenue, the Department of Revenue essentially blesses it, and then we can begin spending it, then we start the process all over for the subsequent month. There's pros and there's cons with both approaches. That frankly has been what we have spent the majority of our time trying to assess. What is the best path forward for us based on our financial situation? For example, we spend an amount of money on our capital. So, for example, DPW, we have some projects in there, the track list, $15,000 for the track list, $217,000 we have allocated for the sewer repair work that has to be done in the commercial street, that's not covered by the state or federal money for the surface roadway project, among other projects. We won't be able to spend capital. We will not necessarily be able to spend a lot of discretionary spending. It's designed to cover salary, it's designed to cover operating expenses only. But each month, we put it together. And there's Department of Revenue parameters, and what we've provided in your packet for this evening is Department of Local Services Bulletin 2020-6, just for information. This lays out what the Board of Selectmen's role is, as well as the Department of Revenue's process is. So we've gone back and forth. Member Duval asked some really good questions that got us thinking. We had a pretty good, robust conversation at the Finance Committee level that also got us thinking. We brainstormed again, and we went through, and we realized that perhaps at this point, a month-to-month is best. The other factor that went into the consideration is for our school district budgets, we have to wait for the town of Cheshire also to pass their school budget. So we would not have a school budget on the town meeting warrant. So we figure at this point, if we go month to month, we get the state aid figures, hoping for August or September at the latest. We put together a budget at that point, have a single town meeting, and go through the normal process at that point with hard data. It's one or the other. What it does do, it eliminates having two town meetings. The other factor that we realized just within the past week is the town clerk and town moderator have been receiving some feedback from town meeting members, particularly members of our vulnerable population, that they were not necessarily content at meeting at this point. So we were concerned that we would go through the process of having a town meeting and not be able to field a quorum. So taking all of that into consideration, at some point, the rubber has to hit the road. We have to commit on a path forward. Internally, in our mind, we always kind of felt that first week of June, between myself and the town accountant and the chairman, that's kind of when we would want to commit where we needed to go. So we've taken the paths as parallel as possible, and at this point, we feel it's best to go on a month-to-month budget. It's new. We haven't done it before, but we're not the only community doing it. It's split about 50-50 in the county. There's still some communities that are going forward with a budget, that they've made some cuts. There's still, one or two that are going forward with the original numbers that know that they can cut, and most of our neighbors are going month to month. It's not a wrong way, it's not a right way. We're just trying to figure out what's the best way.
Now, the month-to-month, Jay, are we gonna have to have a meeting with the Finance Committee every month?
No.
To approve this monies?
No. It's the streamlined process that you'll find in that, when you get home and you're sitting in your chair, read that through. That lays out the process for it. It is somewhat cumbersome, and that was frankly one of the reasons why we didn't want to go month to month initially. We had been, the Munis, which is our accounting software, can produce a month to month budget, and then we tweak it from there. So we've known all along we can do it, but it does add each month. We have to present it to the selectmen have to approve it, and then we can begin spending on it. So we have to be on our game. So like, for example, at the June 17th meeting, if we go this route, we anticipate presenting the July fiscal 21, July 2020 budget has to be approved. When that's done, we have to submit it to the Department of Revenue. The Director of Revenue says, you're good to go, Town of Adams, and then we can spend on it. And that's every department.
How's that gonna play out with the school system now? So we have Cheshire and Adams.
Yes.
Combined here, so,
Yes.
we approve a budget and they say, no, we're not going to, or how's it?
So, I had the meeting on Monday morning with the superintendent and the town administrator of Cheshire. So, the school district, I'm not sure about McCann, but I can tell you for sure Hoosick Valley is going month to month as well. They will submit their month to months to DESE, the Department of Secondary Education. DESE will then generate the first quarter assessment for the town of Adams based on a month to month. So that is due September 1st. Whether or not that occurs is yet to be seen. But they're on a month to month, Cheshire's on a month-to-month, we're on a month-to-month. So you are not approving a school budget. You are approving only an expenditure if you would see it, and there would be no school district expenditure until presumably September, when the first quarter assessment bill is due. And that's still a ways off, and that's still a question mark in terms of what is, but that would be the process.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like Aaron was talking about cuts in administration and whatever. Are these cuts still gonna go through, or are we gonna keep staff as it is right now and?
So those are questions for the superintendent. However, I can tell you in my conversation with him, he anticipates his Chapter 70 money, his state aid money being reduced, and he will have to take some level of action within the school district budget as well. So we will all be essentially working on our budgets like we would in January, except we're likely to be doing it in August. And that was kind of one of the compelling factors for me, is rather than working on a budget reduction plan, the school district and our sister town is working on a full budget, where we would kind of be in a different procedural posture. It would still work, but this way here, we're in the same procedural posture, building a budget. So they would give us a new budget, revised budget. We would have the workshop meetings here again. We'll have the workshop meetings again with the finance committee. We're just going to be doing it in the dead heat of summer rather than winter. And as I said, there's no right or wrong way. We're just trying to determine what's the best path forward for us. Because frankly, even if we passed the fiscal 21 budget, we would still be very cautious in what we would be spending on a month-to-month basis. The only difference is when you pass a full budget, there's a lot less you have to worry about. You're not looking at it monthly other than your monthly expenditures to make sure you're not in deficit on a line item. In this case, this board has a conversation every month about the next month's expenditures, and it's going to be different. We have certain fixed costs that have to be paid on a monthly basis. So Mary will be looking at that, and we'll be presenting a budget that says, month of July, we pay these bills, but you won't necessarily see those in August. And it's going to be new it's a brave new world for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the best kind of snapshot that I can give you.
Now, this is based off of last year's budget, correct?
Yes, so they take the fiscal, I don't know if it's the final fiscal 20 number or if it was the appropriated number. We have to get that information from the DOR, but that's what's called the 112th. It's broken up into those 12. But DOR is starting to give, now that we've been talking about it, Mary's been digging into it a little bit more, we can structure that within what we need to do. So like we had concerns as to whether or not we would be able, as other communities on conference calls I was on, like if you have a retirement payout, if you have certain large payouts that you have to do, can you still do that on a 112th? There are still certain spending restrictions that come along with a month-to-month budget. So we have to get guidance from DOR as we hit each of those bills that are due, can we pay them? And for the most part, we're receiving guidance from the Department of Revenue that says they're going to work with us on all that to make sure. And we're not the only ones in this boat. I was on 2 conference calls already this week about the 112 budget process, and I'm thinking of certain questions, and they're getting asked at the same time, so.
Now, does that put a freeze on our payroll as far as steps or cost of living raises or anything like that?
So collective bargaining agreements.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So collective bargaining agreements that have not yet been finalized. So for us, it's the clerical unit and the police department would not receive cost of living increases. The Department of Public Works, which is our third and final collective bargaining unit, would receive an increase because it's contractually bargained for. So they would build in the COLA. The initial guidance that we received was that exempt or non-union employees would not be able to receive a cost of living increase. However, late today, we received conflicting information that said they can. So we're working on it little by little, but that could be an impact. Nonetheless, no matter what we do, once we pass a budget, it would end up being retroactive anyway to July 1st. So we either pay up front or we pay later.
Well, that was kind of where I was trying to get. It would eventually
It would,
get paid, so.
yes,
Would it be retroactive back?
yes. July 1st.
That would be based on the new contract approval, right? So if
Yes.
these, right, as soon as you approve that new contract, then you go retroactive to whatever you agreed to
Correct.
in that contract.
And I would hope that once we kind of get a good budget path going, and we get into a good rhythm, police is pretty much done. We still have to continue with clerical, but I would anticipate that being a fairly short, hopefully a short bargaining process. Just COVID, I can't say this enough, but COVID-19 just disrupted the entire timeline of trying to do, in municipal finance, you kind of have those guideposts every month, you kind of know you're going to deal with this. Every time of year you're looking at this, oh, there's a collective bargaining agreement that's due. You kind of start the process. It's disrupted everything.
Just a logistical item, if everyone can speak up a little bit. There's some trouble hearing even in Zoom, so I know that the speaker phones are placed as best as we can. Jim, yours is the hardest because I keep forgetting to move that, so that's my apologies, but even Jay, I'm hearing, is a little quiet, which is,
I'll check the volume too.
okay. Apologize for that interruption of the conversation, but I'm getting it from a couple of different places that the sound is off
Are
a
we
little
okay
bit.
with Peter, or?
No,
It's being looked into. Funny thing is, you can hear it in North Bay. Let's put that in Cheshire.
Oh, that's handy.
That might be a good thing.
interesting.
But they're lighting up the phone line there too, so.
Okay,
Well, that's good. That means that we have viewers.
yes, that we do. So I apologize for the interruption about the logistics, but I will open it up for any more questions or comments, just asking everybody to project a little bit more, if you can. Anything?
Yeah, you stated that there was no right or wrong, but apparently the first round was wrong because we've changed it, correct?
No, that's not a correct statement.
Okay, well, I've got some things to say. I believe I said that I thought a 112 would be the best, and before I could elaborate on it, it was poo-pooed. It was just, no, that's good because we won't be able to pay our employees and all this kind of stuff. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact conversation, but I can tell you this much, Joe. As we've gone all along, we've gone back and forth. There have been days where we've thought a monthly is better, and then there's been other days where we haven't. It's a new sea that we're swimming in.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, for example, Mr. Cowley the other night had brought up some points that I hadn't thought of, and I dwelled on it over the weekend. And then I brought it back Monday morning. I gathered our folks together, and I said, what do you think of this point? And they said, geez, those are decent points. I've done as much research as I possibly can along with Mary and Town Council to make sure that we're doing everything legally correct, which we are. We're on, and Town Council's on the line tonight as well. I'm on every Mass Municipal Association conference call I can get, and Mary and I, as well as the treasurer, we're reviewing these bulletins that come out, and things change, every day. So I can tell you it's been incredibly hard. Can I tell you that I wish we had just kind of set a path early on and just stuck with it and not done this? Yes, I certainly do. But I've learned to just have to be flexible, and that's why we've thought all along we kind of have these two parallel paths, and we kind of knew at one point that we had to commit, and that's the point that we're at. So yeah, you most certainly may have had that foresight early on, and you were probably right at that point, but we kind of needed to go through the process and say, where are we now and what's the best way to go?
Yeah, a few other things. I'd like to comment on John Cotley. He had everything down that I was thinking. And I never had talked to him about it or anything because I kind of try to do things on my own. I felt early on in this budget process that we wanted to show Berkshire County that we could muddle through this COVID-19 and have our meetings and, everything was going to be the same. But it wasn't the same. It never was the same since COVID-19. And we're talking about spending a lot of time on, we're going to go down and we're going to have our town meeting outside and, and we're looking too far ahead instead of waiting. And when I see somebody like Stephen Shepard, who's on a finance committee in Williamstown, one of the best economic persons in the country, come out early on and say that anybody that doesn't do a 112 at this point, is doing the wrong thing. And once again, I just felt that we were going way too fast with the budget because I felt like we wanted to show the world that the town of Adams can muddle through anything and get things done before anybody else can, to show that the town of Adams is good. And I was a little bit, I was on the conference call when the Finance Committee was going, and Chairman Hoyt said, oh, we've got contingent plans in case we have to, and the Budget and Finance Committee, Subcommittee met, and I didn't see that posted anywhere.
You actually attended that meeting. It was
Yes,
early
but-
on.
Yeah, I did attend it, but there was no talk about what was going to be cut.
And Mary and Jay were asked to put together a list, and they have that list.
Well, it didn't come out, Christine. Now, be frank and
I am being frank, and
Yeah.
I'm actually quite offended that you think that we are being prideful in the way we went through our process, and saying that we wanted to be tough guys and we wanted to show Berkshire County.
Right.
No, we thought that was the right path, because we have a number of capital projects that we wanted to get done, and that you've wanted to get done, Joe, that our department heads have wanted to get done. And so we were moving forward in a process that we thought was the best at that time.
Yes,
And
but
things have
Christine,
changed, but it's
Chairman-
not because we want to be tough
But
and we want to
Chairman Hoyt,
put
you-
ourselves on the map.
Okay, well, Chairman Hoyt, you said on the conference call that the Budget and Finance Subcommittee went over all the possibilities that would have to be cut. I was there, none of that came out. The primary budget was given out by Mary Beverly.
Yeah.
There was no talk whatsoever in that meeting about what we were going to cut. And if you can tell me what those were, I'd be happy to hear them.
No, and I will tell you what I told the Finance Committee, that
Okay.
that is something that is sitting with the town administrator and the town accountant,
okay.
because it involves personnel and it involves services. And for us to publish a list of about $850,000 of possible cuts would be irresponsible of us, because what it's going to do is instill fear among all of our employees and all of our residents, because what's going to be cut is going to be severe.
Okay.
And so that is why it is sitting with the town accountant and the town administrator, and it is not sitting with the board, it is not sitting with the budget subcommittee. It is a direction that the budget subcommittee gave to the town administrator and the town accountant for them to
So-
put that list together.
So you're saying I, as a selectman, I can't go look at it?
If you would like to look at it on one-on-one and sit with the town administrator and ask what that list looks like, fine, but it would not be brought before a public body in a public setting, because then it makes that list published.
Okay, then my
And
last
that is
question,
what I
I don't
said
want
to
to
the
get at
Finance Committee.
loggerheads, but how was that made and where was it made if I was sitting in that meeting where this was done
The
and I didn't hear
direction was
anything?
given at that meeting for
No.
them to do that work.
Okay, I stopped there. I don't believe it was. I never heard anything of that sort.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, you know, we've got to watch out for open meeting laws, because you said specifically that the Subcommittee on Budget and Finance met, and I was there, and I didn't hear anything about a contingency plan to cut anything. It was just the bare of the primary budget, and there was no talk whatsoever in that budget of what we would have to do if we went forward with that budget and had to make cuts. Okay.
Other questions and comments about the fiscal '21 budget process?
And I have one thing in saying, you know, Jay, you mentioned a democratic process. That doesn't seem too democratic to me.
What doesn't?
This telling me that at that meeting that it was brought out what was going to be cut, because it never was. And so that tells me it's not a democratic if I'm, as a selectman, aren't able to say and hear what's supposed to be cut, so that if the budget went forward in the way it was proposed, where the cuts would take place.
John, you had a comment? Question?
Well, throughout this whole process, I've had questions in regards to going forward with a budget that we have no idea what the state aid's going to be, no idea what the revenues are going to be due to this crisis. So it just continued to gnaw at me, and I just kept bringing it up, and that's what you do. You know, I kept fighting through, and I agree this is the right way to go. When we do receive the state aid from the cherry sheets approved, then we can start to make decisions. We'll make decisions with real numbers. And then we'll go forward. This process maybe, it's good as a good baseline, it's good as education going through the current budget, but, it wasn't going to be the final budget, and that was my opinion. In regards to the cuts, though, the budget that was going through, that was started by the budget, the budget subcommittee, working with the town administrator, was before the COVID-19 hit, and we started off on a budget. And, right or wrong, here we are. And I think we're making a decision at the right time to ensure that we go with the 1/12 budget process until we get the numbers. In regards to the cuts, that was a direction to the town administrator and the town accountant to come up with a list. That list of cuts has nothing to do with this current budget process. Nothing. We're going to take this budget, take it to town meeting, get it approved, cuts were never going to be talked about. Now, the thought was, when the state came back with the numbers, that they'd be ready, the town administrator would be ready to present to the budget subcommittee the cuts that they recommend, instead of having to do it within a week or two really quick. Get them ready, because we're going to go there. We knew we were going to head in that direction. So they're just going to be prepared for it. Those cuts would have nothing to do with the budget process we were following. They still need to have them ready, because we could be cut 10%, 15%. No one knows. No community knows. We have no idea. So maybe the federal government will come through for us. Who knows? But I agree with this 1/12 process. It's the right thing to do. And that also impacts the town meeting too, right?
Correct.
So you'll get to that, right?
Yep. And the town moderator and the town clerk are both on the call. So if there are any questions or if they wanted to make any comments, they chose to call in to be present. They also wanted to know what was going on with the budget process and what that would mean for town meeting.
I also want to add, too, that there's been a tremendous amount of collaboration among my counterparts, Mayor Bernard, going back and forth, asking, and there's been no general consensus. Each community has to make its own decision. And it was over the weekend where I gave it a lot of thought, and I think Member Duval can certainly contest that not contest, but I called him and ran some stuff by him with his experience, particularly with budgeting. And I got his point of view. We sat down with the town accountant again, and we ran out pros and cons. What happens if we do this? What happens if we do that? We received the information that we were waiting for from the school district. Cheshire made their decision, and it all kind of gelled this Monday, right at the time where we felt we had to make a decision. So I will only state that I apologize to anyone if they feel as though I was being nefarious or if I was doing something inappropriate, but this is all uncharted ground for all of us, and I'm doing the best I possibly can to do what's right for the town.
I agree. I mean, we're in charted waters right now. We have to be prepared. When it does come time to get this budget moving, we have an excellent idea of what's going on. We can't just sit on our laurels and say, oh, geez, we got to get a budget tomorrow. It don't work that way. We got to keep working at this, and I think we're doing the right thing.
And I'm sure inevitably, too, Jim, as we go through the 112 process, we're going to miss something. I'm quite confident that that's
inevitable. There's just too much going on. I mean, nobody's ever dealt with anything of this magnitude.
And there's still a lot, as I said before, there's still a lot of contradicting information that is coming out, even from the Department of Revenue, which is supposed to be the clearinghouse. So even they are doing their research, and we kind of sit back and wait for them to agree on their guidance, and then we execute the guidance. So as we go month to month, it's still going to be a learning curve for all of us as we go.
Rick?
Yeah, we're going with the 112. I think we should be aware that unless we've already got contracts for the new control system and the sewer line, the price tag just went up.
Correct.
Because now you're dragging it out 6 more months, which all the costs are going to go up.
That's correct. That was one of our concerns. Also, we have a piece of equipment at the DPW that we were going to fix, the trackless, and put it back out there. It has vegetation control, applications to it, the flare alarm. We can't spend that money in that way under capital. So we even have to go back and look and see do we spend operating money on that and get that repaired? We have to look at each of these issues that we have and prioritize, frankly, and spend the money that way. What's our priorities now on a month-to-month basis? So that capital list item that you received probably may not even look like that when we get to the formal budget process in, say, August or September. And we can't even predict when that's going to happen. The legislature has not yet told us when they're going to meet and be able to put a budget together. So we're hoping for August, but there's no guarantee for that either.
So if we did approve the budget as the process we were going through, we would have, starting July 1, we would have had a budget and started spending at an increase, 3% increase to the school district, McCain 8%, and, we would have been spending at this level, right, which we know we can't because we're going to have to reduce. So we go to, 3-4 months spending at this level, and all of a sudden it all drops, and the state, comes back with a 15% cut. We just spent 3 months at this level. With a budget we approved, but we don't have that money. So now you got to go back and reduce in the remaining months you have of what you just spent in the first 3 months, because we approved the budget, right? So, there's, again, pros, cons, for both, every way you do it, there's pros and cons. Yeah.
But if I overpay my personal electric bill the following month, I reduce it by that much. If my bill's 90 and I pay, or 60 and I pay 90, the following month, I'm only gonna pay 30, because
One of the conversations that we had Mary and I had is, from an accounting standpoint, from an accounting and auditing standpoint, passing a budget was cleaner because you'd have the budget, you'd have all the articles, you'd have all the authorizations. So you could spend your economic development fund, you could spend your enterprise funds. So as we got guidance from these, in May, they issued Bulletin 2020.6, which said that we can spend on the revolving accounts. So that helps us because we have some revolving accounts. We didn't think initially we'd be able to spend off the economic development fund. That's not in this bulletin. We just found out this week we can appropriate from the economic development fund on a 112 budget. So as of today, we got more information. So it's constantly changing. But that was one of the things that we talked about was, how do we, from an auditing standpoint, how do we do it? But we're permitted to do a 112, and we'll just keep good records. And the key is going to be, we're not going to spend a lot of money. We're only going to spend what we have to. Once the board decides that this is a route that you want to go, Mary and I will start looking at internal controls, and we're going to have to figure out from all the department heads, what are your bills coming on a monthly basis? What do you have for July? What do you have for August? That type of conversation.
I know you didn't mean it, I just wanted to say that, not that we spend willy-nilly anyway. We owe to spend kind of tell you,
No,
but
we don't. We're a very lean and mean community, and every dime that we have has some level of impact, which again is why you're going to see other communities be able to go forward with a budget, and we're not going to, because they've already made their cut. So if they know that they have a $250,000 cut that they have to take from their state aid account, they may have decided to take $250,000 out of their stabilization account and plug that hole immediately and just not do a couple capital projects. Every community has to look at how their budget is structured, how we fund our capital off of free cash allocation. So we knew ahead that we'd be able to spend some capital. So when we went in there and made cuts, we put back, as the budget process was going, about $100,000 back into free cash. But that doesn't reduce your personnel expenditure or your operating expenditure. So we weren't really making an impact. That's not cutting our personnel and operating budget. It's not reducing the tax rate by doing that, because we don't fund it that way. Other communities do. So that's why, getting back to, what would the cuts look like, we have that menu of anywhere, from a couple of dollars all the way up to a catastrophic $800,000 menu of cuts. The key is, what do you cut by? And we're not going to know that until we get our revised cherry sheet, as John said, our state aid sheet, and we know, okay, this is what we're looking at. And even then, when you build your budget and that cherry sheet comes out and all of those revenues, all those receipts, they're all estimated anyway. So you're still working off estimated receipts, which is why we're very conservative in how we estimate those receipts, your excise tax, all of those items that are found in the early part of your budget. So we even have to watch that as we go, whether or not we go month to month or whether we go with a budget.
Other questions and comments from the board? If not, I know that the town moderator and the town clerk are on the call, and I'd be happy to hear anything from either one of them, as they've been part of the process as well. Oh, I can't hear you. Myra's trying to talk. Now she's making faces at me.
Technology is great.
Yep.
And it works.
Haley, is there anything while Myra's getting her sound? I can't hear you. You're muted. There.
I have nothing to add. I'm perfect with whatever you guys do.
And Haley, I think before you got on the call, Jay had mentioned that we do have some town meeting members who have already reached out indicating that they would not be willing to attend a town meeting at this point while we're still in the midst of COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes, had 2 members indicate that.
Okay. Okay. And Myra, I don't know which one is your phone. So you
Hi,
can,
can you hear me?
yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, I think it makes the most sense to do with what the board has decided to do and the town administrator going forward with 112. From a town meeting perspective, I think the town meeting members would be more comfortable voting a budget with some level of certainty versus, okay, we're going to vote this number and then you're going to cut. My pulse on town meeting is that they like a level of certainty. So I think going with the 112 and waiting for a revised cherry sheet makes the most sense at this point. As much as I would have liked to have met at both fields under a tent, you know.
It still might be a reality come August or September. Yeah. Okay. Thank you both. Oh, you have questions? What? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that was. John, did you have a
So
comment?
I've been looking at state law, which I probably shouldn't. We have lawyers and, we have a town council. But what I read, and it may not be correct in our last town council to verify it, is that the moderator makes the decision and it comes to the Board of Selectmen when a town meeting cannot be held on the date that's been approved or the location. So I think the first step in the process, as when we get to town meeting, is that the moderator should come to the Board of Selectmen and indicate that due to a state of emergency, due to the COVID-19 virus, that she recommends that the town meeting location and date be changed. And town council can, if you don't mind, if you can go verify that for me.
I would also like that verified because I was on a call earlier today about town meetings, and they indicated that as long as your town meeting warrant wasn't approved and published, that you did not need to have the moderator make that declaration.
I'm a rookie.
You're not a rookie, but I think that just goes to show that it changes
Yeah, so it'll be just
day
verification.
to day, so I think it's something that just needs to be verified.
Right, and that language is found in, Ed, I'll just point it out to you, I'm looking at the DOR bulletin. That language is found in sections 1 through 4 of Chapter 53, Acts of 2020.
2020, what about 1890 when I was looking at it?
Myra, you're unmuted. You might not want to laugh that hard.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, if I could just chime in, Christine.
Sure.
I think what John is pointing out is accurate, but that always takes place at town meeting after the warrant's been approved, and the warrant has not been approved yet, so I don't think the moderator's input at this point matters as much as whether the warrant's approved or not.
Okay, thank you. Try Myra.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I'd like to state too that it's being talked about, and I think it's been finalized, that you can have a 10% deduction in your town meeting members to make a quorum.
Correct.
That's only for open town meetings.
For open, okay, I'm sorry then, yeah.
Yep, because we were hoping that would get passed, but in the final bill that came through, we only opened for open.
So, all right, apologize.
Oops, okay. They were talking about that today as well on that call.
That was the
And
last
there
minute,
wasn't a number that was shared. Okay. Any other discussion? If not, I would like to entertain a motion to, without either of our options, to either go forward with the full budget as we were on that path, or to go to a 1/12 budget and then have the Board of Selectmen be reviewing the July 2020 budget at our next, well, at our June 17th meeting.
I make a motion to go with the 112 budget.
Okay, I have a motion by Jim.
Second.
I have a second by John. Is there further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Or an abstention? Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Under new business, we do have a placeholder for any COVID-19 town operations update. Jay, is there anything to update us on?
Just that right now, we're collaborating with Cheshire, North Adams, and other communities, as well as our Emergency Operations Center in North Adams. So we're consistent in terms of what municipal operations look like as we move in through these phases. Phase 1 had almost zero change for municipal operations other than office space, and there was some possibility for curbside service for libraries. Phase 2 opens up a little bit more. We believe libraries may be able to open up at that point. What that looks like for us, what that looks like for our sister communities, we're not sure yet. We're going to try to be consistent, so all of that research is ongoing now. So for the municipalities, I wouldn't expect any significant changes through the month of June. You know, also, we do have some staff that are presently furloughed, so we also have to take into consideration, you know, what that looks for as we change fiscal years and we go to a 1/12 budget. So we have to take all of that into consideration. In terms of the private sector, in terms of businesses, the best resource that we can direct our business community to is reopeningmassachusetts.gov or mass.gov/reopeningmass. Just type in your browser, Reopening Massachusetts. That is the same source of information we use on the municipal side, independent of any conference calls or meetings we have with the Mass Municipal Association or Department of Health or anything like that. That is your best source of information with specific guidance for sectors. If you're a restaurant, if you're a gymnasium, a gym, any of that, all of that specific information is there. Right now, what we're looking at is phase 2 that we believe is imminent if the numbers hold. We anticipate restaurants will be able to resume outdoor table dining, not indoor. They'll be able to continue curbside, they'll be able to continue takeout, but they're going to expand to outdoor dining. So we've already started to look at, in combination with our local licensing authority, as well as our inspectional services department, what that is going to look like. This board will have the ability to approve a process to approve an establishment that has not yet been permitted to have outdoor seating. So for example, the town of Adams does not have a zoning bylaw that permits a restaurant to have outdoor seating. The state has said, we don't care. We are going to allow the chief executive of a city or a town, here it's the select board, to approve a process to allow a restaurant to come in and petition and say, I'd like to do outdoor seating. So we're looking, we've asked Mark and Jerry in our inspectional services department to dig into those requirements, what our concerns would be as a community. Ed, we're on the liability issue. I'll be in touch this week about that if it's a sidewalk. I put your hat on in the conversation, so I'll be in touch with you about that. So we're going to try to expedite that and get that done as early as possible, so as soon as the governor unlocks that gate, our businesses, our restaurants will have access to that. we'll do our best with that. I don't know if there's anything, Christine, you wanted to kind of add to that
No,
conversation?
I will just add that in terms of that process that Jay just mentioned, that the Board of Selectmen would have to approve, we're looking at possibly holding a special meeting on Monday for the Board of Selectmen to review that process. It is our understanding that the governor may be making the call to start the reopening process as early as Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And in order for us to be ready for that and allow our businesses to be part of that opening, I think it would be in our best interest to at least look at the process that the inspectional services team is putting together and put that before our board. So I think that we'll get a little bit more information, but we'll have to post it by the end of the day tomorrow. But most likely looking at this board meeting at a special day and time, which would be Monday of next week. So that's what I would add at that point.
Yeah, if I may.
Sure, Joe.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky in our town because our sidewalks are so narrow, and, you know, if you start putting tables out there, I know in the past that was a consideration when people wanted to do it because we did have people come forward. Same when people wanted those pyramid signs out in front of their stores, but, you know, if you, like, for instance, the Daily Grind, they could always use Armory Court and that sort of thing. But as far as sidewalks, I know in the bigger cities, they've been taking away room on the roadside to accommodate that, but it's a little different here.
And that's a lot of what Mark and Jerry are taking into consideration with a number of the establishments in town. Rick, did you have a comment?
I would think that, I like the idea, but I think the board will have to talk about that, because now you're allowing basically a business to utilize public land as far as Armory Court. I like the idea that it would open up the restaurant so people could get out, but I think we just need to make a ruling as an exception to the normal rule.
And I think it's my understanding that it would only be through November 1st.
That's correct.
There's a expiration date, so it's just for this period of time.
Oh.
So it wouldn't be forever.
It's temporary, just to get people back up and running.
Okay.
Would it be full restaurant services, alcohol?
Yes, because the kind of the corollary to the outdoor dining permission is also an amendment that has to be made to the liquor licenses to allow the outdoor serving as well. So that was taken into consideration.
Yeah, I can think of a few restaurants that they're going to have issues because there really isn't anywhere for them to go outside other than a sidewalk.
There's only 2 satellite microphone speakers for that.
Yeah.
1, 2.
All right, I thought Joe had one over there.
No, but thank you. I appreciate you looking out for me, Rick. Okay. All right,
So just,
go ahead, John.
you know, since we're business friendly here in Adams, are we going to reach out to the businesses, the restaurants, and let them know that, I'm glad we're going to have it Monday, have it quickly. So you know, the governor indicated that the owners of restaurants, to give them time, and maybe this week, to get into the restaurants and start to prepare for this. So I'm glad it's going to be held on Monday. Another question I'm hearing is about youth sports. And Phase 2 has limited youth sport activity, and I tried to find specifically what that meant. Do you know what that means?
Been able to find it. Same question we've had. The best source is EO, Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. They've got some guidance on there. They have a whole separate document. I may have brought it. But it's not exactly, it flushes it out. The other thing to remember too is just because the state says you can now do it, it may not be best for the local, local community in terms of being able to manage it. Like, for example, there was some conflicting language that we found because Mr. Tober, our DPW director, and I were having the conversation with our facilities working committee to say we need to be ready for when we can do this. And there was some conflicting information that we found where it said you can assemble, but you can't touch a common ball, and then you can only practice. Well, how can you practice if you're going to play sport. You can only do drills and things like that. So we need to do more research on that before we do it. And then we're going to have to make sure, because DPW has been stretched, we're going to have to make sure that they know the anticipated reopening date.
And also playgrounds were also mentioned as phase 2 starting to be open, so we'd have to get information on that.
Well, one of our concerns with playgrounds, and Robert can certainly discuss this more, but some of the requirements for playgrounds is a sanitation requirement.
Right.
So now we're back to the same conversation that we have. What's the priority for our DPW staff? So this is a really hard, so if we decide to do that, if we collectively decide that we want the playgrounds, we're going to have them tasked with sanitizing the playground equipment on some type of schedule. That was a conversation we had with the code enforcement officer this morning, actually, about what that requirement's going to look like.
Just a request, if you have more information for in these 2 areas, these sports playgrounds, for Monday, if you could bring it forward. Thank you.
I think maybe what we should do is have Mark come in, Christine, perhaps, in good presentation. Mark is on every Department of Public Health, local Board of Health call he can, and he's been a substantial wealth of information for me to be able to sit down and have these conversations in terms of how are we going to do this, him and Jerry, and Robert with an internal sanitation plan as well. So,
thank you.
A lot of work.
I feel like the Lieutenant Governor announced some information about youth sports today as part of the press conference, but I need to read it to fully digest it, and I haven't. And I was just looking for it on the website, and I don't see it yet. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else for the COVID-19 update, the next item under new business was the approval of the town meeting warrant, but as we are not going to be moving forward with the town meeting later this month, I'd like to strike
Motion
that.
to table it.
We could table it.
Second?
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay, that is unanimous. All right. The next item is the annual transfer station fees for fiscal 2021. I've asked our DPW Director, Robert Tober, to join us this evening, and so he is here. He's also put together some information. The 2 spreadsheets that were in your packet is the information that Robert shared with us at our last meeting. So he asked that be put back in front of people, but then there was also kind of a breakdown of some numbers and a possible projected increase in costs. I also know that the tax collector is on the phone as well, as she is somebody who handles all of the sales of the permits and the tags. So she's also a resource for this conversation. And I appreciate that Kelly is on the line. And Kelly, I'm going to unmute you, but just be careful. I just wanted to give you that heads up that I had unmuted you. But I'm going to turn things over to Jay and Robert. Robert, I'm going to ask that you use your outdoor voice as best as you can so that the speakerphone can pick you up so those who are on Zoom can hear you. Because the closest speaker, I think, is the one that's between Rick and Joe. And I don't know how much closer we can get that to you. So I will do that. And Jay, I'm going to need you to continue to project because they're still having a hard time hearing you.
Which is rare for Jay.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll just set the stage. So as everybody knows, we're a member of Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District. The district negotiates the contracts for our waste removal from the transfer station, which is obviously the most expensive cost that we have at the transfer station. In the middle of an economic downturn, in the middle of the pandemic, we're also in the middle of Northern Berkshire Solid Waste attempting to negotiate a new contract with, as we talked about at the last meeting, a not so competitive environment. So we're having a very difficult time trying to pin down exactly when and by how much we look at our permit fees. So with that context and introduction, I'll turn it over to Robert to start the conversation tonight.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I just have some numbers like I talked about last time, but I want to emphasize from the start that the contracts for waste have not been finalized yet. Linda Cernick has told me that they have a meeting coming up on June 11th, and hopefully things will be solidified by then, but till then, we're just using projections here on these increases. So, as I mentioned last time, we have these spreadsheets, one on recycling and one on waste, and we're using 2019 data, specifically the average tons that were used, as well as what we call pulls. That's when you take a canister out of the transfer station and bring it away. There are charges associated with both. The pull rates, I think $365 is what the proposal is, and there's also a tonnage rate varying from $110 per ton or $97 per ton, depending upon which one you're looking at, recycling or waste. So looking at the projections for recycling, which is the spreadsheet that says the recycling cost comparison, for atoms, if you look at that top column on the left and you go all the way over to the right, you see in that far column a percentage of change. Total percentage change is 33% for our recycling. And again, that's based on the number of pulls that we saw for 2019, as well as tonnage that's involved there. The total dollars would be $9,828 projected, and that's again for recycling. For waste, we're looking at the other spreadsheet, and we do the same thing, look at atoms, go all the way over the right. It's about a 34% increase. In terms of dollars, that's $5,130, and again, that's based on data from 2019. And there's no reason to believe that that's going to change. If anything, it could possibly go up in view of COVID-19, the fact that everybody is home and cleaning out, so that those numbers could increase, if anything. But anyway, if you take the total, that's $14,958 that we're projecting for an increase. So just simple economics says that you have to cover that cost somehow, or else offset it somehow through reduction in cost or innovation or some kind of other way to offset those costs. So the question is, how are we going to cover those costs? And I did some studying here. I looked at the number of permits that were purchased in 2019, and we have 608 were purchased at the $50 rate, and we had 50 at the $10 rate, which was a second permit for the household. And I took that, and again, I spoke with the town administrator, Jay, and we talked about spreading that evenly over the number of permits. So I took the 14,958 and just divided it by the 658 permits to come up with a increase of $22.73 per permit. Going further and looking at the recurring permit cost is $50. So again, this is something for discussion. And in terms of what the market would bear, we're looking at the other towns. Windsor, for example, charges $75 annually. Cheshire, $100 a sticker, or $150 for a sticker and bags. Williamstown is $120 per sticker. So that gives us a little perspective on what the market can bear. And those are basically my findings in terms of dollars and cents. And again, I just want to emphasize that the contract is not fixed yet.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Questions for Robert or actually, Kelly, was there anything you wanted to add at this point?
I could barely hear him, so I'm not quite sure. Was that a recommendation to be $75?
I'm not going to make that decision. I'm just putting out the facts here and just kind of throwing it out there because, again, our world has changed and our perspective has to change on how we see things. So, you know.
He threw it out there as an option.
Yeah.
Consider.
Okay. Because my personal opinion would be in the one that collects, you know, if we did go up to 75 and maybe gave 5 bag tags with each sticker, and they could still purchase other bag tags along with it, that maybe the ones that buy it just for recycling will maybe start to use it as their trash as well. And maybe with the 5 stickers with the tag, that makes it only go up $19 because 5 tags are $6. So it would only be like an increase of $19 from the 50, and then you get 5 free bags with it for the $75. I think the people in the town would go for that. I'm hoping that it would also help to increase sales as well for the trash removal and the stickers as well.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So I will open it up to any questions or comments from the board. Yep, hold on, John, or Jim, sorry.
Okay, we raised the rate up to $75. The city of North Adams for a non-resident is $85. They'll take your mattresses, they'll take anything you want to bring them for $10 more. But I don't think we're going to gain anything there. We already have people going from Adams to North Adams for their transfer station. I say that we should leave it at where it is for now for the fiscal year, because we're not going to gain that much money here. Leave it the way it is. When we finally know what the budget's going to be, then we'll raise it in accordance. We can't just raise it up to $75 and find out that, geez, $75 isn't enough. We got to raise it again another $20. I mean, we put it to the people in this town enough as it is. We don't have to do one increase, then another increase. I'm a firm believer in that. We'll just leave it the way it is for this fiscal year. We're not going to lose that much money. Our contract is out till September 30th, I believe. Once the contract runs out, we have a new negotiated contract, the new price is going to go in. Once we have that new price, the next fiscal year, we'll charge them accordingly. That way there, we don't raise any eyebrows and say, geez, there you go again, doubling up on us.
Jay, what do we budget for the transfer station, our expense?
On the budget side, it's approximately $60,000.
Okay.
The balance, the spreadsheet that Mary put together for everybody shows what expenses come out of the revolving account, which is funded by the permit and bag sales and scrap return. And then we also pay expenses off the tax rate, off the budget in the transfer station. So the transfer station budget is $60,000, and then we use the revolving account to also pay some bills.
I mean, this year we did, because of the scrap metal, we have new employees up there. Our scrap metal, we're making money on scrap metal, which we haven't in the past, for one thing. So, I mean, that's a big gain. There's a lot of things going on up there right now where we're going to be going ahead of the game. And I feel as though, I strongly feel as though that we should hold off on this increase.
I guess my concern is after looking at the numbers that Linda showed us at our last meeting and what that contract could be and what our expenses could be for our tonnage and everything, if we hold off in setting the rates, that people will buy their permits now. If we increase, we won't recover any of that, and we might be at a point where we actually have to close the transfer station because we won't be able to afford it. Like that's what I heard 2 weeks ago with that presentation, because that number that Linda presented was a lot higher, and I can't remember the number, but it was significantly higher than what we are paying now. And that's what concerns me, to wait 3 months, and we might actually lose the transfer station altogether.
I don't think we'll ever lose the transfer station. The transfer station is something that we do for the townspeople. It's not a novelty. I'm not sure what the proper word would be.
Service.
It's a service that we offer to the town. Now, we're looking at Windsor, $75. We're looking at Chester, $100. These two towns and Williamstown are their transfer stations do very little. business. It's basically all haulers. Where Adams is basically townspeople are going to the transfer station. There's a difference. It costs a lot of money for a hauler to go to Windsor to pick up at 5 houses.
Others? Anyone else have comments, questions? Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
The stickers are valid when to when?
Fiscal,
Fiscal.
So July, June?
which means everybody primarily buys them early. And that's one of the reasons why Kelly would like us to make a decision so she can start selling, because she actually sells them at the transfer station. So the majority of your sticker sales are in the early part of the fiscal year, if not just before it. So if you have the sheet, if you look at your, the transfer station, I don't think it was inserted into your budget book, but Mary did some math. For example, the total revolving fund brought in fiscal '20, $28,083. And we spent down the majority of the fiscal '20 budget side of it. So the concern very simply is, do we think by leaving at $50, even with an increase in September or October, whenever Jimmy thought the contract was going to go
Probably
in
by the
place,
end of September.
if we're going to have enough funds to cover the increase in cost in removing the waste from the transfer station with that $50 permit, or increasing the permit fee at that point and charge whatever people choose at that point to buy the permit, what number that would be.
And we did have a meeting with Trevor of Casella 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And with COVID-19, we don't know when it's COVID-19, we're going to go back to normal. So they did say that they would extend it out further if need be. I mean, it don't matter to me which way it does matter to me in a way, but I just don't want to see the townspeople get wrapped twice in the increases for this.
I would have him try to extend that existing contract out for as long as possible.
Well, I mean, June 11th, we have a meeting. The contract is basically drawn up. I got a copy from Linda the other day. We're going to discuss the contract. The contract still got to go down to Casella Waste. And I think Kessler is, the consulting company is going to be looking at that contract also to see if, we try to do a little more negotiating on it. I mean, it's tough when you only got one show in town.
Well, I think we need to decide the increase, who's gonna pay it? The people who like utilize it, or everybody else in town?
Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead, Kelly.
I was also, well, if we don't know what the contract is yet, if we leave it at 50 and then go up when the contract is signed, I don't agree with that either. It's either we go up now and stay that way and maybe make some money where we can keep it that price for a few years. And also maybe give them another day. I know we've tried that Thursdays and I think they like the Thursday night hours. And if possible, if everything goes well with this state budget stuff comes in, if we put a light up there and keep that night hours, that gives them an extra day. That's something that they can think about. Now they're getting maybe 5 free tags and an extra night. But I wouldn't go up, if you're going to leave it the same, I wouldn't go up mid-year either. I would leave it that way for the year.
Right.
That's
And
right.
then maybe have a real big meeting come next year at this time for the townspeople to realize why we have to go up.
I agree with you, Kelly. I think we should leave it at $50 for the year, and come next July, we go up whatever accordingly, what the contract says we have to go up.
I don't know. I know I pay, and I don't want to say the rate, because it's actually low, I've been there a long time. I pay more in 2 months, we'll say, than $75.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that drastic. If they're gonna go with a contractor or pay more to go to North Adams,
Yeah, North Adams would be $10 more a month, or a year rather, excuse me, for,
then what the proposed increase is for that.
and North Adams takes everything. So, I mean, there's a big difference.
We also,
And also, North Adams, we're working on what they call a charm, where we pay our fees. North Adams is gonna allow Adams residents to bring their mattresses and their electronics and whatever else they have to their transfer station. Well, I believe it's gonna be one Saturday a month for starters.
except there's costs to dispose of that, and they don't have to pay for the North Adams permit, but they have to pay to dispose of the item. And even with, like for our transfer station, unless it's changed, you pay the permit, you buy the bag tag, but we don't weigh you. So we receive our costs through the bag tag, but if you go up there, Jim, even with a non-resident, don't you still go over that scale?
Not with the charm program, you won't. I'm quite sure that's what it's gonna be. We can bring our mattresses up there. Well, right now, North Adams they have to renew their contract for the mattresses with the electronics and stuff. That's something that they were gonna open up to us.
How does North Adams do it? How do they take electronics, take mattresses? How do they do that? I'm sorry. How does North Adams do it? They do the same things we do, plus they take electronics, plus they take mattresses, and that's $85 a year.
From what I understand, they're set up to do this, where we can't set up to do it.
I guess from like I will say, like, basically what Rick said, when I had a private hauler, I was paying $98 every 3 months for every other week pickup. And that adds up. And so $75 a year to be able to take my trash and my recycling, which is what I was getting rid of with curbside private hauler, is still a bargain. And it sounds like, I mean, Kelly's thrown out the idea of adding some stickers when people buy their permit, which is something we don't do now. So at the time that they buy their sticker, if we were to increase it, we would give them so many stickers, which is something we could do, and adding a third day, maybe longer term.
You also don't have to go up to 75 either.
No?
You can go up 5, 10, 15. Board has
Right.
full ability to go up to whatever it thinks is reasonable. If the contract at this rate that we know we're able to cover for with what we have budgeted and for what we have in the revolving fund, if we know we're going to get 3 months, maybe we could even get 6 months out of it, then that would reduce the need to go up that 23 and change, or that $25, which has a little bit of a safety margin, assuming maybe some people wouldn't buy the permit and use it at the $75 mark. So maybe we only go up $10 if we know we're going to have some cushion. My concern as town administrator is making sure that that does not go into the red, that if we know we have an increase in cost at some point coming at us in the next fiscal year, we have to find a way to cover that anticipated increase in cost. And there's only 2 ways to do that. One, appropriate money on the budget side, and we've been trying to do a level funded budget. So, like, for example, the transfer station operating costs are $59,455. $500 for the building, $1,800 for miscellaneous equipment, $25,000 for refuse removal, $24,000 for Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management, and $7,800 for any engineering costs that we have to do for the facility or for the landfill. So we would have to decide, do we want to increase that $25,000 line item a certain amount to cover the added costs, or as Rick said, which hits every taxpayer, independent of whether or not they use it, or do we shift that cost over to the permit side, of which someone is using it, therefore they're paying for a portion of its cost. There's no, it's difficult, there's really no science to it. It's just at this point, we're faced with a contract renewal that in a perfect world would have come at the time where we have to decide what to go up by. In this situation, we need to make a decision so that we know what to charge our users, but our costs aren't going to go up until at some point, say mid-fiscal year.
Correct.
And you're going to get a bunch of users that are going to say, well, I'm buying my sticker now at $50. And if every user that's going to use it, just randomly say 600 users, say they're going to buy their sticker now at the $50 rate, that may not cover what the increased cost goes up. That is my concern, is just how are we going to cover those costs when they go up?
Right, and the other thing you gotta realize, next fiscal year, because they're Teamsters, there's gonna be another $10 increase. The contract is gonna keep going up, because it's a Teamsters union, we're fighting that down in Boston. Linda was down there 2 months ago, I believe, at the lawyers are representing us in the other communities, and we're still fighting it, because we're not a big city out here. You know, and so, but they are working on it to, you know, try to curb some of the Teamsters costs. And if we can do that, it's gonna reduce our costs also. But talking with, you know, what's his name? I can't think of the guy's name now, I got it written down here somewhere.
Trevor?
Trevor, down at Casella Waste. I mean, Trevor's willing to work with us, but he can only do so much also. But I just don't want to see a huge, see townspeople get whacked and then get re-whacked again. I mean, you know, $10 and the dump stickers, I would agree to something like that.
But I don't think we'd ever charge people twice, though.
No.
You know, if somebody buys their ticket, buys their permit at $50, God bless them, they've got that for $50
Right.
for the fiscal year. If we go up to 75, they buy it at 75. If you buy it in December, the person who's kind of losing out is the person who buys it in December anyway, because they're only getting 6 months of you know, use out of it, where the other person who bought it ahead of time, they get full 12 months use out of it. So I don't think we would ever go back and say, hey, you only paid 75, but now we got to go up to 85. I don't think we'd ever,
No.
you know, hey, God bless you, you bought it early. Early bird gets the worm.
Yep.
And I believe the whole sticker thing came about because it was coming down to a point where if we didn't try this, it was getting closed. Because it was such a hit on the budget. We can't afford to keep paying more for a selective service.
Right,
You know, that much more.
and Joe brought this up at the last meeting. The other way you save money is you compact better, and you make sure that the number, you get every ounce out of that container. So now you're paying to remove it when it's full up, and then you're paying for weight. So whether it's empty or whether it's full, you're still paying it, was it, Jim, $3.45, I think, is
Yes.
for municipal solid waste? So, you know, we know that whether we get that contract or not, we're gonna start training our guys to look and make sure, and they do, Ray does a great job now, Kyle does a great job. They make sure that they get the voids out of there. Can they do better? I'm sure. You know, that's Robert's responsibility as DPW director to make sure that they're doing a good job up there, you know, with it. So that's the other way, but you know, how much are we gonna be able to save off that, you know, reduced by a couple of tons, reduced by a couple of loads? It's not a hard science, hard data business, which is hard for us to have these decisions.
And so there's a couple things we could do. We could leave the fee as is for next year. We can increase the fee. We can add things with the fee. We can table until our next meeting, which I know Kelly probably doesn't want to hear, but I have also heard that there's a June 11th meeting about the contract. We're still in the month of June, and we could still listen to see what happens at that meeting, and we can decide on permit fees at on our June 17th meeting. I know that will delay things for Kelly.
Madam
But
Chair.
that's- yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make a point here. June 11th meeting is going to be the commissioners voting on the contract to move it forward. So it's not, it won't be approved on June 11th per se.
Okay. So then it wouldn't matter if we table or not.
June 11th, it would go down, it's going to be going down to Casella. And I believe Casella already has it, and Trevor's looking at it and stuff right at the present time.
Okay.
So just for conversation's sake,
I'm sorry.
just for quick math,
Yep,
at 608 permits, at $50, the town earns $30,400. So for those of you who are geeks at home with your calculators, that's 608 times $50. That brings in $30,400. So if we know that at a portion of the year, we're gonna go up 15, the question for Robert and I was, how much do we have to go up in that, from that permit to make the 15? If we assume we're still going to sell 608 stickers at $60, that brings us up to $36,480. So I think we have to kind of figure out, Jim, at what point you think those new figures might kick in and work from that angle too. And there's also the other assessment that goes in there too, is what the tonnage looks like and what the number of pulls look like.
Correct.
That way, the only data we have, Robert, we don't break that down monthly, do we? Number of pulls per month?
No, I don't see it, but I'm sure.
It's just an annual
Yeah.
figure.
Yeah.
So that's the other component, is we don't really know, what in January, right after the holidays, probably spikes a little bit, then it goes down, then you get spring cleaning, it probably goes up a little bit.
Right
don't
now
know,
it's peaking.
Right, because everybody's here. So we know that right now, we're paying out more than we were before, simply because of usage.
Yeah, I'd
Hi,
like
Joe.
to say that transfer stations really were started, as Jim alluded to earlier, for the case of Windsor. I mean, you're not going to get any trash hauler to go up to Windsor, and, his gas and time just isn't worth it. So a lot of the rural areas started transfer stations, and a lot of them made it at the beginning because the recyclable market was a go, and recyclables would bring in the cash that you needed, but that bottom of that has dropped out. So the idea now is that making money from recyclables isn't going to happen, and I don't think our transfer station can ever be make us money. We'd be lucky if we could even, I'd say break even, which I don't think we can ever do. And once, Jim also alluded to this, is there's a monopoly now with Casellas. It's kind of similar to when Dufour has the busing contract. So you're at their mercy, and they've treated the school system quite well. And another thing too is that you have to go up. 75, I don't think, as Christine mentioned, and others who have haulers come to their houses. I mean, that's a lot more. I've always, recycled and brought my things to the landfill because that's just the way that I feel I want to do it. But, once again, Robert mentioned you have to become very creative, and creativity is something that, you have to work on. And as I mentioned, and you mentioned, Jay, if you compress everything to the max, if we can get 3-phase so we can push everything and get more into our compactor. And, I'm up there, and, both Kyle and the other gentleman, his name eludes me now, they do a good job, but, they can't be at the place where people dump in. And I've seen people watching through their, and I've seen it 2 or 3 times, watching through their windshield, so when the guy goes away, they run over and just throw it in. It happens all the time. I've seen it 5, 6 times. They just wait there and they look, and then they see if anybody's there, and they just run over and toss it in. And so you can't expect them to sit there every day. It's not like a state park where you sit in a little booth and, people come in and they pay their tickets. But it's never going to be a moneymaker, but it's a social component to our community.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, people love to go up to landfills. I just went to Cheshire today because I'm helping my brother with a roof. I had to get rid of the asbestos shingles. So he has a sticker, but I had to pay $45 extra when I emptied his truck for the removal of asbestos and other debris, So, I don't know. Asphalt, excuse me. It was fault.
Joe, you were stoic with that change too. That was good. In
But
terms of,
anyways, I'm just saying that it has to really go up. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's never gonna be solvent, but if we continue to, it has to just be checked by everybody. Everybody's gotta be doing their part up there.
and Robert has a plan to install cameras up there to dissuade
Right.
that behavior.
Yeah, because it happens. I mean, that's people's common way if they can sneak in, because once again, just say it one time more, I've seen it. I've seen it a number of times. People just wait, then a gentleman goes down to help somebody and they just run over and throw it out, I've even seen a guy with like a orange ribbon, so it looked orange, so when you're going over it from a distance, it looks like a sticker, but I don't know how you can, continue to make it go without adding a little more money onto the people. And I don't think it's going to be a point where now people are going to say, well, I'm not going up there at $75 when other people who have private haulers are paying, a lot more, but that's just my thought.
We can also go up to 70. Remember, you have the full range.
Right, we have a recommendation from the town, from our treasurer collector. I would only support like the 75 plus the deal of the stickers if we did it for 2 or 3. How long is the contract for?
I'm not
that
sure.
you're signing for?
I'll know the 11th.
Because we just need some stability, because, when we started off at $25, we knew that was way low, but we pulled people in to buy stickers. That's what the board at the time decided. Hung around there for a while, went up to 50, hung around there for a while, now we're going up to 75. If we could just, if we could do it for a 2-year period, just some stability for 2 years, instead of, I'm going to pay $75 this year, and then they're going to pay $100 next year. It's just, then we just say, the heck with it. We're going to lose the base that we have. So I would say if we could do a 2-year, this is just a suggestion, 2 years, $75 with the great deal of stickers, the 6 stickers, over time, you get a 2-year deal, And you know what the price is for 2 years. It's not going to be, it's going to go up again 25 and it's going to give up, kind of thing.
I think Trevor was looking at a 3-year contract.
For 3 years, I'm
quite sure that's what we were down there a few weeks ago. Because he don't want to go through all this every year either. And I don't blame him.
They won't sign a 1-year contract.
I think I'm quite sure it's a 3-year contract.
The other math, just so the board is aware of all your options, you can also increase the bag tag fee, which is right now set at $1.20. You can increase, so we give out 5 at a time for $6. You can also increase that, but that only really gets you the people that are disposing of their MSW up there. That doesn't cover necessarily the recycling. So we felt the better math is the use sticker and leave the bag tags alone. And you're still giving a break, so you have to pay more to use the facility, but you're still paying a lower, $1.20 for each bag that you throw away. But you could also go up to, say, just $2 there as well. And Kelly gave me some, although like I said to Joe when he asked questions, 3-year comparison, because some people are buying for the next fiscal year in June, from an accounting standpoint, it kind of gets lumped into the previous fiscal year, so it's hard to tell the figures. But for example, permit stickers in fiscal 20 were $658. That brought in $30,900. Bag tag stickers were $9,566 and brought in $11,479. However, in fiscal year 19, or accounted for in fiscal 19, we sold 16,819 bag tag stickers. So you see a drop there, and I know Joe had asked this at one point. I can't answer why it dropped. Either it was a user drop or an accounting drop. Kelly, these are your numbers, so I don't know if you know anything more about those numbers, but just that's the raw data that we have.
Oh, yeah, because when the bag tags first went out, they were $1 a piece. And before they went up in July 1st, the people that buy them bought them in massive amounts in fiscal 19 before they went up at still at $1, so they were saving money.
Yeah. And
So that's why they were a little bit lower, and fiscal 20 is because most of them bought the end of fiscal 19 before they went up July 1st
Right.
to save themselves the money.
I have Joe and then Rick.
Yeah, another thing too, with these large haulers, they've been fortunate now because gas prices have been down. Those trucks burn a lot of fuel, plus they're heavy maintenance machines because there's so many moving components to them that the next contract that's going to be signed, I'm sure that they're going to take into account that they know the gas prices aren't going to stay low like they are. And once again, with all the moving parts they have, there's always a lot of maintenance with those type of machines. And the older they get, the worse it is with seals and all that stuff, because there's a lot of hydraulics involved.
The other factor to keep in mind too, I have a note here, if somebody approaches that transfer station and says, I have scrap to deposit, we don't look for a permit, because there's no cost to us to remove the scrap. We make money on that. So we don't ask somebody, if somebody shows up with some good scrap, we allow them to put it into the dumpster and go, because we get paid for that scrap. We do not, that does not cost the town any money. That is the only service we offer up there like that.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion, but I'll preface it with, as far as a 2-year commitment, this board is gonna, basically decide next year if it goes up or not. And I don't wanna handcuff ourselves for next year, who knows what's gonna happen. So, I'm gonna make a motion that the sticker price, and you can report me as the jerk, I don't care, that sticker price go to $75 to include 5 bag tags, effective immediately.
Would be for fiscal 21. Or, yeah. But
Right,
they could be
but the
sold
price change for
anytime.
21 stickers would be effective immediately. So if somebody came in, if I came in tomorrow morning to buy a sticker,
For next year.
it would be the
The new
$75.
fiscal year.
Yep. Yep. So I have a motion by Rick to increase the bag tags, the transfer station fee to $75 for the next fiscal year. And that fee would include 5 bag tags at the time of purchase. Do I have a second?
I'm gonna second it.
Second by Joe. Is there any further discussion?
I'm going to vote no. I just would like to see a 2-year deal because it goes up pretty much every year now. We're going to lose individuals, customers, if they just see this trend. That's just for me, my own opinion.
Yeah.
I just want to correct.
I didn't hear, you didn't have a time, I agree with that point of view, but you're saying for just that 1 year?
Yeah, just for next year.
We can say for 1 year.
And also that, did it go up last year?
No.
No,
No.
no, it went up from
The board
25.
decided not to because it didn't want to lose people going there. So this board can decide, next year, I just don't want to handcuff us either. I mean, if something drastic happens, it's either,
Yep.
Raise it a little bit or close the darn thing.
And that initial $25 was for 6 months. It wasn't for a full year. And then and then the board decided for a full year that they would increase that to 50 because that equaled that first
And
year.
it wasn't really an increase.
And there wasn't an increase. And with a contract that we're not sure what that increase is going to be, our expenses, I'm of the same mindset of Rick, that it's probably best to just go 1 year, because we might be having a conversation next year about whether or not we can even afford to have the transfer station, even with the fee. So, but the motion on the table is just for the 1 year.
If we close a transfer station, Northern Berkshire Solid Waste District will be closed also, which is gonna put us in a whole new scenario that we'll never be able to afford, because now you're looking at Teamsters curbside picking up, and it's quite expensive.
So the motion on the table is $75 for 1 year, and it includes 5 bag tags.
I'm still gonna second that.
Okay.
Because the reason I'm saying that is because the elderly that don't drive, they have to have somebody come and get their trash. And I think people that drive cars and are more mobile people, then I believe they have the wherewithal to pay for that, and it becomes a social outlet. And I'm just asking, are we going to keep brush? Because there was some discussion, I would change my mind if we weren't gonna allow people to bring brush and cuttings there, because there was some talk that it was too expensive and that, so is that gonna be part of their $75 that they're still allowed to bring in cuttings?
That's up to the board to decide. I can give you the pros and cons on it, Joe, which, as you know, as you articulated, really haven't changed. There's a cost to dispose of the brush, and we have not disposed of it in several years, both from what we bring in at the transfer station and from what we do ourselves with our own DPW vegetation control work. So in order for us to dispose of our existing brush pile that we have at our material storage yard, we estimated $25,000 to have a professional commercial tub grinder come in and get rid of that entire pile. And the pile is, it's behind wastewater if you want to look, but it's those,
I've seen
you
it
know, yeah,
before.
the big stumps, all of that stuff. So it's not anything that our Vermeer unit can do. It's not anything that another, a third-party commercial can do. It has to be that. So in terms of the brush conversation, we can figure out a way to charge, an additional money for the brush. We can attempt to limit the amount, which we probably may. We already may have a limit of like yards. I don't know, Robert, do we have an actual limit that we're supposed to enforce?
I'm not sure.
As you said, that's a kind of a manpower issue too, Joe. Hey, that's a yard, or no, it's really a yard and a half. It's tough to measure. That's one concern. We can also attempt to find a way going forward for any brush coming in now. Do we attempt to get rid of that as we get it? In other words, try to work with a tree service that may want it for mulch. So at the end of the day, accepting brush is a cost, to the town. Or as Jim said, if we receive a charm day from North Adams, which is not a member of Northern Berkshire Solid Waste, and we're able to bring brush up there, as long as you have your permit for Adams, they'll accept you. Is that your understanding, Jim, if that
Yes.
goes through? So whether we accept it or whether North Adams accepts it, a resident who buys a permit from us will still be able to deposit brush. The question will be where. So we can hold off on the brush conversation until we know, when do we expect that decision through?
We don't know yet. There's a lot going on that end of it also, because I really can't say. But,
Those are the debates about the brush. There is a cost.
Because there's a lot of people that bring their clippings up there.
Well, yard waste, I think, would always be accepted,
Yeah.
the leaves, the composting, the grass
Right.
clippings. That's never been an issue for us, because that naturally decomposes. It's that hard brush, those branches, those types of trimmings that pile up, and we have to find a place to store them.
It'd almost be worth the time for the town to buy a chipper. But I don't want to kill a dead horse. That's all I've got to say, and I seconded
Okay.
Rick's motion.
All right, so if there's no further questions or discussion, all those in favor of a $75 fee that includes 5 bag tags for the next fiscal year, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
no.
No abstentions. So it's a 3-2 vote with a $75 fee for next year. Okay.
We can leave brush alone for now, and we can revisit the conversation.
Well,
at a-
people are going to still be able to bring it now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They can
Board
bring it.
hasn't changed otherwise.
Chairman,
Yes, Kelly?
may I ask you,
Yep.
are you guys going to still keep the second car for the household at $10?
We can make a motion on that if you would like us to do that. But yes, I forgot that there is that fee. There's an additional fee for a second car. It's an additional $10.
I don't, personally see a reason to raise that one. They're already paying the sticker price. This is just an additional vehicle,
I believe that,
But there's
in my opinion.
no back tags with it.
and no bag tags. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. The $10 basically covers the cost of the sticker, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
You could even lower that if you wanted.
You could lower it?
You can do anything you want with it. You can
Well,
lower
it was, my understanding, it was set at $10 because that's how much it cost us.
Yeah, I'm pretty, Kelly can tell you for sure, but that covers its cost, and, you know, I don't know what the sticker cost is.
Yeah, it's around there. I think we make a buck on it or something like that.
There you go.
It's about
So
$9 to
you may
print.
not wanna cut it then.
So I need a motion then on the second tag for the household.
Is that on the agenda?
No, but it's still part of
It's
the
a fee.
fees
It's part of the fee structure.
for the
Oh,
transfer station.
We're very simple compared to North Adams. North Adams has a resident, a non-resident, commercial, outside commercial. It's got like 6 or 7 fees. We're easy. We have 3 fees, what it costs for a bag tag permit and an additional permit.
So if it's to leave the cost alone for the second tag and the permits, you probably roll it into the same motion. It's not touching the bag tag. That fee is
all right.
$1.20.
I
or
understand what you...
5 for $6. I get
So-
that mixed up.
All
Yes.
right, I'll make a motion that the price of the second sticker at $10 and the bag tag, the price of the bag tag stickers at
$20.
$1.20 apiece remain the same.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Okay. Thank you. And while Robert is still here with us, we have in front of us, we have a letter from Robert and a letter from the town administrator. I'll read the letter from the town administrator. Dear Chairman Hoyt, this letter is to advise the Board of Selectmen that subject to the board's ratification, as provided in Section 10 of the town charter, I have appointed the following people to the positions of seasonal laborer for the Department of Public Works: Mike Durant, David Holt, and Sean Marco. Mike Durant, David Holt, and Sean Marco have worked for the town in this capacity in the past and are coming back to continue to support the DPW to provide this valuable service to the town of Adams. Upon your ratification and the passing of all hiring requirements, the seasonal laborers will begin this position effective June 4th, 2020 at the DPW seasonal laborer rate of $12.75 per hour. I will turn this over to Robert and to Jay to see if there's anything else you would like to add with regard to the seasonals.
I'll let Robert add anything if you'd like.
No, it's just that we desperately need them, and they've worked for us in the past. They're good workers, so.
Yeah, I just would like to say,
go.
they're already working, so June 4th is tomorrow. But I concur with Robert that I know 2 of them quite well, and we need the manpower, and I just worry so much about, the biggest thing I worry about is the Army Corps of Engineers. We're using so much of our seasonal help to do those banks each year. I mean, and, you know, they just finish them and the vegetation grows and grows, and that's where a lot of our time is being spent. I don't know, you can't work with the Army Corps, they're very tough. Once you sign a contract and an agreement with them, you're in it. So I'd like to make a motion to ratify the DPW seasonal laborers, Michael Durant, David Holt, and Sean Marco.
Okay, I have a motion by Joe,
Second it.
second by Jim. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. Okay.
And Robert, we have 2 others, I believe, in the pipeline.
Yep, we're trying to recruit them now, so.
And we're gonna hold at 5 for a period of time and see how it works before we expand. But that seems to be the general consensus from the operations supervisor and the working foreman, that 5 will do for now, before we bring on more.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say, I was up the cemetery today, and Bellevue and Maple Street. The cemeteries are looking really good right now. What help we do have, we have guys up there that you should be out doing other things, but they're up there mowing and weed whacking also. And compared to Memorial Day weekend, it's pristine up there. I mean, as a selectman, I was very embarrassed to be up there Memorial Day weekend. That should never happen like that, ever. And I hope I never, ever see that again. Because the people that go up to that cemetery on Memorial Day weekend are up there for social gathering with their loved ones. And they go up there and see that place in shambles like it was. It was very disgraceful. That's all I got to say.
All right. Thanks, Jim. So next on the agenda is approval of job description for DPW working foreman highway. This was brought before the Board of Selectmen at our March 4th meeting and was tabled at that time. And so it's been brought before us. Robert, if you wanted to add anything, is Donna on the call? I just need to find out, because I think Donna Season wanted to speak to this as well.
That's what she had said earlier, but I was never able to
Yes.
touch
Yep.
base with her.
Donna, I think I found you. Is that you?
Yes, it's me.
Okay, great. So, Donna, I don't know if you want to start. I know that this was a job description that you had been working on when you were interim town administrator and had moved through the personnel subcommittee. It got hung up there for a little bit. We presented it March 4th to the full Board of Selectmen, and it was tabled. So I don't know if you want to start that conversation, and then maybe turn it to Robert to talk about the need for it.
Sure, I can just start. It's pretty simple. I think one of the efforts that we took on when I was interim was recognizing that a lot of our job descriptions are not particularly helpful. They're very vague. They don't have a lot of detail within the job description. And so this position description was just part of that overall effort at making sure that the job descriptions really reflected what individuals did within that department. Where there was the need for parity and stuff in the organization or within the department, we also made sure that the job description reflected that. So.
Okay. And Jay and Robert, I'll turn it to, well, I guess I'll go to Robert.
Yeah, I just think that, for balance, we need that highway working foreman. We have a working foreman for Parks and Recs already, and to have that balance on the highway side is just a natural progression. He oversees that crew of highway workers, just like our foreman for the Parks and Grounds does that, and that provides a support to the operating supervisor, Tim. And so this is like a natural hierarchy that you'll see in most organizations, that you need a working foreman there. And I think it's important to have that. It provides some relief as well as some oversight for those men as relief for our operating supervisors. So I think it's important that we have that.
Questions for Robert?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
It's akin to this, but is your operation supervisor sitting down with you because he knows procedures and times when things are done? Is he corresponding, trying to help you? Because Jim just alluded to that the Memorial Day, the cemeteries didn't look good. Is the communication there, is the operation supervisor sitting down with you and saying, Robert, I know you're new to this position, and here's normally what we do, and this is the timing when we do it, because I feel where I see there's a lack of communication. We want to be a tourist town, and you go by the Ashwelter Cook Trail down on Lime Street, and you can't even see the sign. Did he ever mention to you that, oh, we should get down there and do the sign? I'm just asking, is there a communication with him to the point where you're talking daily, or is he kind of going on his own and doing things? Do you feel he's been helping you with all the nuances of our community? Because it's tough for someone coming in and all of a sudden, you know, people are saying, oh, we got a new highway department and everything looks like hell, you know, because you don't know as a new person what timing goes and when you should do things. I mean, that's communication. There should be communication, and the operator supervisor should be doing that communication to you because he's next in line. So I just want to make sure that there's communication and that he's telling you what you should do, not that he's bossing you, but, you know, to get an idea of the components to make this community and what should be done at certain times to make people less, you know, adamant about things. So I'm just encouraging good communication amongst you and Tim Coda, and not, you know, saying, oh, they didn't do this, and, you know, in other words, I want some communication. So please let me know if Tim is sitting down with you and helping you along in your manner, because it's tough for a person like you coming in and not knowing the way things go, and I don't want anybody turning their back on you and not coming up to you and say, why don't you take a ride? Have you gone on any rides with Tim? Okay.
Yep, when I first started, and we continue to do that,
Okay.
I speak with Tim every single
Yeah,
day.
okay.
But having this foreman in here is also a support, because I speak with Steve on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm speaking with Bob, who is, you know, filling in for Tim, so that communication is on a daily basis. I'll call in the morning. What I'm working towards is a planning by week to see what they're scheduling for next week. And my job as a director is to set the priorities, and Tim is to direct his crew on how to go about doing that priority. So that's what my position here is. So.
It appears to me, and this is just my thought, as Jim mentioned, I saw it didn't look good, the cemetery, and that everybody knows that on Memorial Day, those cemeteries got to look good. Yeah. I mean, that's just common knowledge if you live in Adams, as Jim mentioned. I mean, people are going up there. There's nothing as beautiful as seeing all those new flags and realizing how many people, you know, went to war for this country, and then going up there to see grass, because I thought it looked pretty bad too. And, you know, but there has to be a lineage of how things are done, when they should be done, and, you know, it just doesn't seem like the communication is there, in my opinion.
I just want to say too, again, we usually hire 7 seasonals,
Yeah.
and we did not have that this year. We're just starting to hire them, so that was a big factor in that.
Yeah.
Now, again, in terms of prioritizing, you get everybody, all hands on board to go to the priority and take care of it. Other things will give for that moment of time, but that's the kind of priority that we're working on, you know, achieving in that communication. So.
Yeah, as long as you communicate.
Some of it too, Joe, was, and I see the communication. In fact, every Wednesday at around 9 o'clock, Robert, myself, Donna, and Tim get together, and we talk about priorities, we talk about what's going on, any issues or concerns, and we get a sense from where they're working, and we do a project status update, et cetera. So we get everybody together. Then at about 10 o'clock or so, we talk about facilities. Frankly, we tried to run an experiment, which was we wanted to see how much we were able to accomplish without hiring the large number of seasonals that we have, knowing that we were coming up on tight fiscal times. Also, we knew without play on the fields, the parks and grounds guys didn't have to put as much time and effort into the fields. we assumed incorrectly that we'd be able to kind of shift their attention to the cemeteries. That did not work out as well as we had thought, and frankly, we were caught with our pants down at the last minute that we need the seasonals. So I use the cautionary term going forward, because as we look to build a budget, after the month-to-month is done, we have to take that into consideration, because that is one of the potential cuts there, is to say we don't hire seasonals. But with that comes a service delivery failure, and that is we may not be able to maintain our infrastructure to the level that we have. So that was kind of a learning curve, for us, and I own a part of that responsibility as town administrator.
Because I've said this so many meetings that we're getting so much new things in our community which are really good, like the new visitors parking lot, but then we don't have the people to maintain it, to make it look good. Absolutely. And we want to have a bike trail going all the way to North Adams, and we can't even get somebody in there to cut the grass where that big Ashwiltacook sign is. And with part of the trail closed, there's so many people using that part, and I walk by it every day and I say to myself, geez, if I'm a tourist and I'm riding my bicycle and I come to the end of this and, the trash can, you can't even see it, the grass is up to the sign, and it just looks horrible. I don't know, I guess, but if you keep on using the crutch that we don't have enough people, you become an enabler. People got to suck up and do their work, because I've always had a good work ethic, and if I have to do more, I'll do it. That's just the person I am, and I can't say everybody's the same, because they're not, but I know if I see something and I can do it, I'll do it. And that's all I have to say.
I'm going to probably bring it back to the conversation about the
right.
job description.
Yeah.
If we can. Is it about the job description?
No, I wanted to talk about the cemeteries and stuff.
Okay.
I did bring it to the proper people's attention, that we did need the summer help up there, seasonals, whatever you want to call them. When we had our budget hearings, I mentioned it during the budget hearings. So this is something we have to have. I talked to Robert in the hallway upstairs before, told him the same thing. It's not, and it fell on deaf ears because of an experiment. Well, it wasn't a very good experiment by any means. My phone was ringing off the hook from the Friday before, the Thursday before, until the Monday after.
Just, everyone needs to know, there is a cost associated with carrying the seasons. We have budgeted, at a regular budget cycle, $58,000 for seasonals. That's what we have budgeted for 7 individuals, and we're now coming up on 5.
But you also have to look at it this way. These people that are up that cemetery are people that have been around in this town for 70 plus years, 60 plus years, or whatever, paying taxes. And we really let them people down this year. Really let them down.
So I'm going to stop the seasonal talk, because that was actually the item above where we are now, when we talked about the appointment of the seasonal laborers. So I'm going to bring the discussion back to the job description for the DPW working foreman highway. Back on March 4th, John, you had actually tabled this, and Rick, you seconded that. So to bring it back on the table this evening, I would need those motions to take place to, I guess, bring it back, because it was technically tabled.
So I'll make a motion to remove that item from the being tabled.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And what do you want to do with it now?
I
Yeah,
would like to make a motion that we approve the job description of working foreman for highway as presented by the Personnel Subcommittee.
okay, I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Jim. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous.
May I ask a question about that?
Certainly.
We're just okaying the job description, we're not okaying filling it?
Oh,
Okay,
it's already filled.
it's already filled?
No, it isn't.
No, it would have to be posted internally before it would be posted externally. It is my understanding when we talked about this back on March 4th that this is in this year's budget. It was budgeted for the year.
It's been budgeted.
It has been budgeted, so we could go ahead and post this and fill it.
It does not change the head count of the department. It was Mr. Coda's position that he vacated when the board created operations supervisor. It was not filled. At some point, as Donna said, the job description was looked at, needed to be updated. Mr. Scrocky is working foreman on the Parks and Grounds side. His job description was reviewed. His job description was approved by the board in, was it March? Whatever date you said it was stated.
Yeah, March 4th.
This one was not. So this one will be posted and likely filled internally, which is why you see on the org chart that it won't increase the head count.
Okay, it won't increase the head count. I presume I won't, certainly ain't, not gonna mention a name, but I would bet my bottom dollar that I know who's going to get that position. So that person moves up, and let's put a line going up. So all of a sudden, the bottom person, do we have to hire someone else to fill out that slate? Okay.
So like, for example, Joe, you see, for hypothetical purposes, if you look on there, you see operator 3. Let's
Yeah.
say that's the most senior person who might put in for the job and who's
Right.
qualified.
Yeah,
The operator 3 position would disappear from there in its entirety.
okay, so we're gonna go up and then not gonna fill another position because, you know, at this time, putting, you know, hiring more people when we're supposed to be mean and lean just isn't the time to hire people. That's just my thought, you know, but.
All right. We're going to move on to tag sales. Donna, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Good night. So there have been a number of phone calls to Town Hall with regard to tag sales and whether or not the town is allowing for tag sales while we are still dealing with a health crisis. And I think Kelly is still on the call with us. Kelly typically comes to the Board of Selectmen in the month of May, asking for the board's approval for the annual townwide tag sale, and is looking for some direction on that. So I thought it would be good for us to have that conversation about whether or not we would be moving forward with the annual town tag sale and whether or not we would be allowing tag sales in general. Tag sales does fall under the purview of the Board of Selectmen per legal counsel, who is still on the call. So I wanted to open that up for discussion and possibly any action. Yes, Joe?
I would like to make a motion to forego any tag sale. There's too much hands-on certain things. There's too much close proximity with people, and I just don't think it's the right time for tag sales, personally.
I have a motion by Joe to suspend tag sales at this time. And a second by Jim. Is there any discussion?
The government's plan does not include tag sales.
I have not seen anything about tag sales. I know that donation locations are starting to open up, but with very strict guidelines about how they would open. And I think it would be, my personal opinion, it would be difficult to enforce that on a local resident running a tag sale. I don't know. What's happening out
I
there?
just want to say, my uncle passed away, you can only have 10 people at his funeral. You can't have 15 people on your lawn picking up.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just wondering if the governor had anything to talk about in regards to tag sales.
I haven't
That's my
seen
question.
anything.
Thank you.
I haven't seen anything either, John. I've been keeping my eye on, I haven't heard anything about tag sales, actually.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
This action can be reversed in the future if it comes up.
I mean, if Joe wants to amend it, I mean, it could be to suspend tag sales while we're still in a pandemic, or we could just...
No, we
Okay.
could always amend it later
Okay,
and just say.
yep. So I have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of suspending tag sales? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. There you are, Kelly. You have your decision about the annual townwide tag sale.
And I couldn't hear, so tell me what that was?
That it is not going to happen.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you too. Okay. That brings us down to department reports. Jay, anything under town administrator?
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Legal counsel. Everyone should have a copy of legal counsel's report, but I think, Ed, you are unmuted.
I am.
Okay,
So
great.
since my last report, I worked on the following matters. I spoke with the bankruptcy trustee and attended a bankruptcy meeting with the trustee concerning NJD, the current owner of the Curtis Paper property. I prepared for oral argument, which is scheduled tomorrow before the Massachusetts Appeals Court via Zoom concerning the Gaines case. I responded to an inquiry regarding the legality of tag sale permits. I reviewed and commented on the latest draft of the tobacco regulations. I researched and provided comments concerning the town's budgetary options. I responded to 2 open meeting law questions. I reviewed and commented on a public records request, and I attended and participated in today's Board of Health meeting.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions for legal counsel?
Just one, I wanted to get on the Board of Health meeting, but I couldn't get there on time. And how did that play out? Did anybody?
I had a previous
Okay, then
commitment today.
no, I don't have any questions.
My understanding with regard to the topic of the tobacco regulations is that they did review a draft of the tobacco regulations. They set their next meeting for Wednesday, July 1st. I think that they're still going to be reviewing the tobacco regulations at that meeting, and they will be setting a public hearing regarding those regulations no earlier than late July.
Okay, thank you.
Outside of that, I don't know anything else, because that's all I asked about
Yeah.
at the end of that meeting. That and that they have a new chair for the Board of Health, and that is David Rhodes, and vice chair is Peter Hoyt. Those are the only updates I am aware of. All right. Any other questions for legal counsel? Hearing none, I'll close out the department reports, and I'll move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. I will start with John, because the camera is pointed this way.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Jim, anything?
Yeah, well, Doug McNally, Driscoll, Linda, Saranac, and myself met with Trevor from Casella Waste, which we all know already. We discussed how to write the contract, and Kessler Consulting was informed of what went on. We're meeting June 11th to discuss and draft and to vote and present the contract to Casella Waste. Bulky waste collection will be June 27th. We are encouraging residents to unload their own cars because of COVID-19. The food trucks at the Council on Aging continue to be a success. We're serving well over 200 families every 2 weeks. I attended a Prudential Committee meeting May 25th. The water overheating in the tanks is still an issue. John Barrett is working diligently to resolve this issue. And banners for fallen heroes are now at the printers waiting for Brian to print the last example for approval.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Jim. Rick?
I have nothing.
Joe?
Yeah, I took part in a webinar on the Mass MS4 general permit draft modifications, and there was 2 people represented by the EPA talking about it's been revamped somewhat, some of the language, and most of the people, I wanted to ask questions, but you had to kind of type them in as you went along, so I didn't get involved with that. And but most of the questions came from developers. A lot of the new modifications have to do with developers, and when there's money involved with development, they had a lot of questions. I was more in tune to want to talk about clean water.
All right. Anything under announcements and good of the order? I'm going to start down with Joe because that's where the camera is.
No, it's gone on too long today. I have a few things, but they're not important.
Okay. Rick?
I have nothing.
Jim?
I have nothing.
John?
I'm good.
Under announcements and good of the order, I do have 2 items. I just want to report out that Community Development Block Grant COVID-19 public hearing on Monday went well. Thank you for attending. And I know Community Development is following up with the businesses that were on the call, but they are also following up with a communication to those who are have been defined as a micro enterprise. And that communication will be going out shortly. So Donna wanted me to share that in case she wasn't on the call any longer. And then I also wanted to read, because we don't always get to get nice comments, but we did receive a nice letter that just says, I want to reach out to you to say thank you for reinstituting small parades for loved ones in your wonderful community. While it probably seems like a minuscule thing, I had the opportunity to see firsthand how meaningful it actually is for families in Adams. Once again, another community missed the boat, so I won't name the community that they mentioned. Yesterday, my granddaughter turned 5, and I saw how community becomes unified even during these trying times. While we were out there, several neighbors went to their own yards and also cheered for her. I am confident that the 2 minutes it took for the drive by put no citizen in harm's way to exposure of this finally waning virus. None of this would even be possible without the tremendous effort put forth by not only a terrific officer and servant to Adams, but a sincere, caring, wonderful person, Officer Nick Dabrowski. Officer Dabrowski has for years dedicated himself to children and families in your community. I had the pleasure of meeting Nick at Ropes Camp several years ago, and we became great friends. Nick's efforts should not go unnoticed, and I would like to also sincerely thank Officers Travis Cunningham and Alex Morse and those incredible firefighters who volunteered their time to be a part of making 5-year-old insert name, birthday one she will never forget. If you can possibly get the names of the firefighters, please extend my heartfelt thanks to them as well. And sincerely, a resident of the town of Adams. So I just wanted to make sure I passed that along. I know that Officer Dabrowski has been organizing the wave parades. He's indicated that each parade has 2 to 3 cruisers, normally 2 to 3 fire engines, 2 to 3 ambulances, and 3 to 4 forest warden vehicles. I think they're taking about 15 minutes from start to finish. But it is going well, and we've had a number of them. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Madam Chair, may I just
Yes.
make one quick comment?
Sure.
I forgot, but I did want to mention about the small businesses. They're the backbone of our community. And anything we can do for people in small businesses, they make up this town. And I was glad that Miss Mullen, I don't know her name, from Berkshire Regional Planning, that we had people on the phone. I think that was one of the few public meetings that I remember that we had people on the phone communicating their needs. So I think that was a plus for us, because it shows that, that we're the lead community and we need, all the help that we can get. So
Certainly. Thanks.
yeah.
We do have an executive session in front of us, so I will ask for a motion to go into the executive session with the understanding that we would only be coming out of executive session with adjournment as our only business at that point. Does someone want to make a motion?
I will make a motion, the board enter an executive session for purpose number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
Okay, I have a motion by Rick. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Jim. This is a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Christine is a yes, so that is unanimous. So as of 9:29 p.m., we will go into executive session. I do ask for a 5-minute recess, though, before we pick up
Madam Chairman,
that.
could you just say that when we come out of that, we're just going to adjourn?
I did prior to
Okay.
the, yep, but
Okay.
we will come out of it just to adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.